So check this out. The watch I'm talking about today is selling right now for $600,000. Or you got this other one here, maybe a better deal at $550,000. Or maybe like me, you're on a budget. Well, here we go. We got a mil sub version going for $375. Wait up, let me be clear. That's $375,000, which is over 1,000 times more than that watch originally cost. So what's going on here? Of course, not all Rolex Submariners cost this much. If you look around, have a friend, have some cash, you can probably grab one for $5,000. But why do Submariners go for hundreds of thousands? And how did this particular line of Rolex, a tool watch made to serve a specific purpose no less, become the most iconic watch in the world? Oh, and why did I sell mine, and what are the 3 watches I would recommend over it? Well, gentlemen, all of that is covered in today's video. So to answer the question, how did the Rolex Submariner become the most iconic watch in the world, we have to go back about 100 years, to 1926 to be exact. You see, this is when Rolex introduced the oyster case. So in the world of watchmaking, this was a groundbreaking innovation. The details were a screw-down case back and a secure bezel with winding crown. This oyster case made the watch water-resistant, which Rolex displayed by submerging one of their watches in a water tank at Basel Fair in 1927. Later that year, they actually had Mercedes Gleitz wear an oyster perpetual watch around her neck as she swam the English Channel. And for the next 20 years, Rolex would continue to innovate and ride off of these publicity stunts. And in the 1950s, they saw another opportunity as Jacques Cousteau all of a sudden made scuba diving something desirable for the masses, especially the masses with money. Yeah, Rolex saw the need for a reliable diver's watch. So it was in 1953 that Rolex revealed they had created a watch that could be submerged down to 100 meters. That's 330 feet for us Americans. And although it may sound commonplace now, this was a big deal at the time. And to capitalize on it, in 1954, they revealed the first Rolex Submariner. And again, that was at the watch conference in Basel, now known as Basel World. Now, what made the first Submariner unique is it was specifically geared for the professional diver. It had a unidirectional rotating bezel, and if you can let me know in the comments, why only unidirectional? Why didn't it go both ways? If you know this, let me know down below. It had the thick, well-built oyster perpetual case to keep the water out. Now, it's reference number 6204 that is considered by most people to be the first Rolex Submariner. Now, starting in 1954, we saw reference 6205. It was very similar to the 6204, but the difference is usually being seen in the dial text, the shape of the hands, variations in the crown tube, and some examples of the 6205 didn't even have the word Submariner on the dial. And by the way, if you were to have one of these watches, it would not be selling for a few $100,000. You'd be up probably in the few millions. Why? Because collectors love them. Their place in history, their transitional nature, and the fact that there were so few of them made. Yeah, a lot of these prices are economics 101. So starting in 1955, we saw a big improvement in the depth rating. They basically doubled it down to 200 meters, 660 feet for us Americans. But that big improvement isn't actually the big feature that collectors look for. It's the big crown. So for any of you guys that aren't into watches, the crown is going to be the part on the side that sticks out that allows you to wind the watch and adjust the time. The size of the crown on these watches, 8 millimeters. And even though the run of this watch was only 4 years, it became incredibly popular because of the movie Dr. No. Now, as many of you guys know, Dr. No was the first James Bond movie ever made. Released in 1962, Sean Connery was the actor, and the watch that he was wearing, well, of course, it was a Rolex Submariner Big Crown. And that wasn't by accident, because Ian Fleming in the books talked about how James Bond wore Rolex watches. Although the one he referred to in the books was the Explorer, but for that movie and in a decision which would shape watch history, they decided to go with the Submariner, which I'm not going to argue with. I think it was an excellent choice. And I promise I'll explain why in a few minutes. So by 1959, Rolex had moved on to reference 6536. This change is marked by a slightly smaller crown. Notice it went down to 6 millimeters, no longer 8 millimeters. And this reference number is known for the different dial configurations. Some with 2 lines of text, other ones with 4 lines of text. We also see the watch reference 5508, and this one in particular was sometimes called the small crown sub. Although to further confuse you, and Rolex was doing a lot of things here, but 5510 had a larger crown back at 8 millimeters. But why all these watches are still collected besides their age is they came before the golden era. Yeah, the golden age of subs was about to begin with one huge innovation. Well, maybe it wasn't an innovation, but it definitely was a stylistic change, and that was the introduction of the crown guard. So by the early 1960s, Rolex started to put a crown guard on the watch. And what this did for the overall shape, the silhouette of the watch, is make it much more robust. Seriously, just look at the silhouette difference here and you can clearly see that it's the crown guard that really gives the modern Rolex its silhouette and its iconic look that we still have today. And the first watch to have this was reference 5512. Now the early versions of these are highly sought after because there were a lot of little changes in production. And again, the text on the dial would change up and there were 2 lines of text. And in case you're wondering, the first 2 were for the depth rating, the second 2 were for the chronometer certification. But arguably the most quintessential vintage sub is going to be reference number 5513. And having said that, it's probably one of the easiest ones to find because of its long production time. This watch was in production for 27 years, from 1962 to 1989. Now, if you're looking at a 5513, what you're going to notice is that there are only 2 lines of text. These watches were not chronometer certified. But getting back to the design and the iconic look, we can't forget reference number 1680. Why was this such a big deal? Guys, it was the introduction of the Cyclops date. Now, the Cyclops date magnifier was first seen on the Rolex Datejust. Now, it does show when the date actually makes sense. On a dive watch, a lot of the purists are going to say no, but when it comes to sales and making the watch practical for the masses, having a date on it, yeah, all of a sudden made it a practical daily wear watch that the masses started to pick up and wear. Oh, and if you ever see an early one of these with the iconic Submariner in red, these are known as red subs and they're highly sought after by collectors. Now, throughout the 1970s and 1980s, we saw a lot of transition. As you probably know, this was the time of the quartz crisis and a lot of higher end watchmakers were going through some tough financial times. Rolex was able to weather the storm and they actually even made some innovations in terms of depth rating. They got the watches rating down to 300 meters. And on top of that, reference 16800 also introduced the sapphire crystal. This basically replaced acrylic crystals and it made the watch more scratch resistant. They also introduced caliber 3035, which made it really easy to be able to set the date. Now, the modern era for the Rolex Submariner goes from the 1980s to the 2000s. It was during this time that the brand really matured into an iconic symbol. The Submariner itself started to become a symbol of luxury, and we'll talk about why that happened here in a few minutes. And the company as a whole started to focus in on 2 areas with the watches. First up, they spent a lot of time trying to improve the movements and the accuracy of the watches and quality control. Now, the problem with that is that most people can't see that and they didn't put much value on it. So this other place the company focused was actually the big one that most people noticed. And that is they started to experiment with different materials. So I mentioned earlier, the Submariner started off as a tool watch. What I mean by that is a watch that was meant for a functional purpose, for divers to be able to see time, to be able to measure how long they had been under the water. Well, by the 1980s, 90s, into the 2000s, they said, you know, that's not our market anymore, and we need to create variations that can draw in other types of watch wearers and maybe even collectors and people maybe that want a bit of bling on their wrist. So all of a sudden, we started seeing specialty steels. We saw gold. We start to see two-tone watches, white gold. They start to experiment with the bezel, different materials. All of a sudden, we've got different colors being brought in. And of course, at this period, we start to see all the different nicknames. The Kermit debuted in 2003, and it was meant to mark the 50th anniversary of the Submariner. It had this bright green aluminum bezel and a maxi dial with larger lume plots. And yes, there was a bit of blowback, but it laid the foundation for all the different variations we would see over the next 20 years. Now, as mentioned, steel and yellow gold had been introduced into by the late 1980s. And if you're looking for a solid gold variation, look for reference number 16618, which, as you can imagine, this one usually sells for a lot more than a regular steel Submariner. And now let's come to the present. Starting in 2008, the ceramic era. Now, Rolex calls their ceramic bezels Cerachrom. I like them. They've got a really nice modern aesthetic. And I think for most people, just functional wise, it's nice to have a bezel that doesn't scratch easily. And it's also worth noting that Rolex at this time also introduced the Super Case. Basically, thicker lugs and a broader crown guard profile. And there's probably no better example of this than reference number 116610LV, known in the watch circles as the Hulk. Yes, I think you can figure out why, unless you've watched the latest Captain America movie, then you may be confused. Because the original Hulk is green, not red. And yes, I'm a Marvel fan. I know there are like 9 colors of Hulk, but come on, keep the guy green. Now, I mentioned earlier, the Submariner was the better pick for James Bond than going with the Explorer. And I'm going to stick with that opinion. My reasoning for this is, although the Explorer is a great watch, and I own one, I wear it, I love it, the Submariner is just tougher and actually is the choice of the British Royal Navy. Because a little known fact, I know the enthusiasts know it, but for most people, they don't even know that in 1957, the Ministry of Defense approached Rolex and wanted them to create a standard issue watch for their divers. Now, as anyone that's ever worked with the military, you know they're really specific about what they want to get. They're willing to pay for it. And at the time, Rolex had the big crown, which they sent 50 apparently to the Navy, and these were the first sets of watches that their divers wore. And so it's this fact, with Bond being a Navy commander, that it would make sense that he would actually have a big crown Rolex watch. So yeah, props to the costume designers, or maybe they got lucky, but that's, I thought, just a really interesting little tidbit of history there. Oh, and in case you didn't notice, that third watch I showed you at the beginning of the video, that was a mil sub, which yeah, at the time issued was 1/1000th the cost of what people are buying them for now. I'm betting there are tons of vets out there that are wishing they just would have kept one, or simply taken theirs, put it in a box and said, hey, you know, I just need to buy another, which at the time probably was a couple $100. But yeah, these mil subs, which are apparently made on and off up until almost 1980, are very difficult to find because the men they were issued to, well, they used them and they got beat up. They probably got lost. They were used on missions. And if any of them are still around, they're probably kept in the families as maybe a family heirloom. And if you're ever looking for one of them, look on the dial. I don't know, maybe you're in a pawn shop just looking at watches there. Look for this small detail. See that T right there above the dive depth? Guys, this denotes that they had stripped out the radium loom, which apparently was pretty dangerous, and they replaced it with tritium. So yeah, if you ever see this on a watch and you can verify that this is a vintage and it's real, and if it's only going for a few thousand, again, you got to really know your watches. There are some other things to look for, which if you know what they are, show off in the comments below. I love hearing from you watch experts. But yeah, if you spot one of those out in the wild, you may want to consider grabbing it. Now, as many of you guys know, I used to have a Rolex Submariner no date. I got a deal on it. I bought it from an authorized dealer about 7 or 8 years ago, owned it for 2 years, and wore it only a handful of times. Now, you may be saying, well, Antonio, why'd you make a whole video of a watch that you didn't even really like? And why do you even think this watch is iconic? The answer is a bit more nuanced. First off, I have a pretty sizable watch collection, and I have quite a few dive watches. In fact, that was the problem. After I bought the watch, I realized that I had already so many in my collection that the Rolex Sub was just redundant. I also was fortunate to already have 3 Rolexes in my collection, so this 4th one really didn't do anything for me. So yeah, I got a good offer and I sold it. Now, if you're looking for a good dive watch and you don't want to get a Rolex Submariner, well, you might want to check out Blancpain's 50 Fathoms. Now, for many people, they'll claim that actually this is the original dive watch, and it's an amazing high quality piece that for people that don't know watches, it flies under the radar, but for watch collectors, they know what it is. It's also a little bit larger, so if you got bigger wrists, I know for me as a small wrist guy, I liked the size of the Submariner, but I know for some of you guys that want something bigger, the Blancpain is probably a good pick. Now, for me personally, the dive watch that is my go-to is going to be the Tudor Black Bay 58. Now, for anyone that knows Rolex's and Tudor's relationship, they're going to say it's basically the same watch. Yeah, but this one is a lot more affordable. And for me, it's the small details. I love the coloring on the Black Bay 58 and the winder pin protector. I love the concentric circles, the way that they extend out and protect that thin piece of metal. Very cool. One of my favorite watches in my collection. And another dive watch I would recommend, check out the Yema Superman. It's got a storied history, and I love the bezel lockdown it's got on it. For some people, it may come off as a bit cumbersome. I find it's practical, unique, and has a really cool look to it. And in case you're wondering, no, I do not miss my Rolex Submariner because, you know, my Yachtmaster is pretty much the same thing, although this bezel goes both ways. Which, hey, I'm progressive like that. Just kidding. But on a serious note, gents, did you guys know I'm giving away my watch collection? Seriously, if you go over to the watch lever, I have already given away thousands and thousands of dollars in watches and other just cool stuff. Because first up, over the years, I just have accumulated a lot of stuff and I want to get rid of it. And yes, I could sell it, but I want to thank the guys for helping me build up the best watch community on the planet. Seriously, guys, get over to Watch Lever. Check out what we're doing over there. So many details. We've got a great community. We've got tons of free courses. Everything you need to know about watches is right there for you in the classroom. All my best infographics from around the web are right there in one place. And like I said, I'm giving away tons of watches, tons of other accessories, tons of great deals. But honestly, that's not the real reason to join. The reason to join is the people. There are awesome guys in there, watch lovers just like you, that want to share their watch of the day, that want to go deep on the different brands, on what watches they love, what watches they maybe don't love, what their grail watches are, how they got into watch collecting. So gents, I'm putting the link in the description. I'll pin it as the first comment, but just go over to school.com/watch-lover. Yeah, if you just search on Google, you'll find it. It's an awesome community. I want to see you in there. So now let's answer the question. Why did the Rolex Submariner become the most iconic watch in the world? Well, you may think it was because Sean Connery wore it in the first couple movies of James Bond, and therefore people saw it and they had to get it. That's probably underestimating. It had a huge effect on sales and the popularity of the watch, but it's not the biggest reason. So it must be all the cultural endorsements from celebrities. I mean, you look at the top tennis players in the world, they're all sporting Rolexes, they're talking about Rolex, they're in the advertisements. If you look around in Hollywood, everyone is sporting a Rolex, tons of people have a Submariner. It just seems to be the watch that celebrities wear. Is that the reason? Well, it's definitely made it more glamorous, it's definitely made it more popular, but that's not the main reason that the Rolex Submariner became the most iconic watch in the world. Reliability and innovation. I mean, these were the guys that made the waterproof watch. They made it a household name. Over the period of 100 years, they've constantly innovated, creating watches with better movement, watches that people can depend on with their lives. So that's got to be the reason, right? Reliability and innovation. No, there is something even bigger. Maybe it's brand prestige. I mean, just simply saying the name Rolex, for most people, I know that some of you guys are super high end, but for most people, when they think, man, if you got a Rolex watch, that is a sign that you've made it. The very name of the brand is synonymous with success and luxury. We're close. All these things are important, but it's not the number one reason. Exclusivity, demand, yeah, you can buy a used one on the open market, but if you want something new, you have to go to an authorized dealer, and a lot of times you have to wait to get the watch, sometimes years. No, all those things contribute, but the number one reason the Rolex Submariner is the most iconic watch on the planet, gents, I'm going to argue it's simply its timeless aesthetic. It's the fact that the average layman can recognize the silhouette. And the biggest thing here is they got lucky. They got the design right, almost right out the gate. And now for over 70 years, they've been making basically the same watch. Yeah, as I said in this video, they've made a few changes, but overall, this watch, like compounding interest, has had time to build on itself. And all those other things, yes, I mentioned have come afterwards, but it's the timeless aesthetic that they got right out the gate. And the focus the brand has given this particular model for over 3/4 of a century has enabled it to transcend being a watch to being a symbol. What do you think? Agree? Disagree? Think I'm full of shit? Guys, go ahead and let me know down in the comments below. And here, I got another video for you. Boom, right here. But seriously, guys, I'd love to hear from you down in the comments below. And go check out Watch Lover. That's my free group, guys. I'll link to it down in the description of today's video. You can join for free. And like I said, gents, I'm giving away almost my entire watch collection. No, I'm not giving away my Rolexes. I don't know, maybe I will. But yeah, guys, go over there and join Watch Lover or watch this video, boom, right here.